Hi everyone, welcome at 𝗲𝘃𝗲𝗿𝘁𝗄. I'm Kevin, as you might know already. I'm a blockchain engineer and the owner of a small Web3 software agency. So I would have every reason to be super biased around blockchain and in general bleeding edge technologies such as AI, quantum computers and all these fancy stuff, and I really love it, right? And I honestly have spent tons amount of research and time on all these topics, right? I've been working on IoT, smart city applications and infrastructure, to blockchain, of course, which is my main focus, to AI applications many years before it was the hype. And yeah, today let's focus on the intersection between blockchain and AI, right? Because most of you might have seen certain blockchain or AI projects that actually use both technologies. And the funny thing is, both sectors, like the AI people, don't think much of projects from what I have seen if it uses blockchain as well. And the other way around, right? Blockchain people, hardcore crypto people, always, like, let's say, devalue projects that also use AI, right? So that's a really interesting, let's say, perspective switch that I want to get in here. And as said, I would have every reason to be super biased today, and I will try my best to make it as objective as possible. And you will tell me in the comments if I am or not. That's, I think we have a deal. So starting out, let's focus on what's the actual value proposition of those two technologies, right? Of course, it's super simplified, and there are many other business cases, many other approaches to these technologies. But on a super high level, the main mission of blockchain is actually somewhat censorship resistance. You have, or not just censorship resistance, just independence, right? You have an infrastructure that you can use for whatever you want to build, but you're not relying on some specific third party like Alphabet, Meta, or any of those big tech giants, or even banks, right? Like central banks, whoever that's processing your money, and so on and so forth. So that's the main value proposition of blockchain, why it got invented. Now let's switch over to AI. What does AI? Everyone is, just talking about AI all the time, and I'm thinking of it all the time too. So I'm guilty of that as well. But in general, what does AI actually do for us, and what it possibly isn't that good at least not yet, right? And AI in general is that counterpart to algorithms, right? What is an algorithm? If you write some software code on your, if you're a software developer, you write code, like you basically just write text, like when we are talking and writing books. A developer does nothing else but in a language that the computer understands and then knows what to do with it. So basically, really similar to a book, right? The book gives you information that you then can apply in the real world. A software developer is somewhat the translator to computers. Not completely accurate, but that's somewhat the algorithm perspective. So what does AI now do? AI tries to fill in the gaps what algorithms are not really good at. Right? Algorithms are really bad at cases, at software scenarios which haven't been explicitly coded in. Let's say you, I think the AIs that we have right now are a perfect example, like a chatbot, like ChatGPT. You have a regular chat and you can write anything in there and you will get a contextual response, something that makes sense, right? You can write about singing, you can write about economics, about super niche topics like quantum physics. Everything is possible because the model was trained on that. So an algorithm, if you would try, and I did that in the past, try to code a chatbot without AI, you basically would need to have something like, if the user types in something like quantum, or quantum physics, then those are the kind of answers you maybe want to give, or questions that you might want to ask as a chatbot. So it basically doesn't make much sense, right? Because an algorithm just has a fixed set of flows that it can follow in general. And the thing now is, an AI fills that by basically saying, okay, we don't need a deterministic flow here. We actually want to have more creativity, more flexibility. We need to find out of the box solutions. And that's why AI is so crazy, right? You have these things that basically a black box, which is also a pain point of AI solutions most of the time, that you don't know what you are getting out, right? But that's the value proposition of AI versus algorithms. So the question that we want to answer today, or try to answer, is how does AI and blockchain actually relate to each other, and can they make sense if they are being combined? So first of all, they're actually completely different technologies. So from the top of my head, there is no reason why the combination of those two technologies specifically makes sense. Right? It's like saying, oh, let's use quantum computers and blockchain. It's the same question, basically. Just using two random technologies, let's try to combine them, and, well, the value proposition of that product, of course, then depends on the business case and the pain point that you want to solve. But just from the purely technological perspective, there's no unique value proposition by directly combining these technologies out of the box. But, of course, there are business cases where these properties from another, for example, aspects where AI is actually weak on, when it comes to transparency, auditability, if I pronounce it correctly, like basically understanding what you get out of that AI, and having some kind of, compliance and all these things that actually go more towards that security, data privacy route. Is that actually information that the AI was allowed to use, and all that kind of stuff are pain points that you could argue that the blockchain might be able to solve to some extent, right? Of course, I can't draw you now how that specifically would work, because there are startups with really smart people working on these kind of things. But those are just to give you an early idea. The combination of these technologies, of course, can make sense, but just because they're two awesome and interesting technologies doesn't make it better by just combining them. So, as always, business case first, what's the pain point you want to solve, and then use the correct set of technologies. And the sad part now is, with those two technologies, they're really hype driven, which means when you think about it, every startup now tries to use AI. The same thing was, and still sometimes is, every startup had to use blockchain, NFTs, or all these things. Bullshit. Simple bullshit. So alone this argument that you want to use NFTs to make information exchange, for example, more interoperable, basically making that exchange of information easier between companies, which was a use case for certain protocols, or the reason why they said they're using NFTs, that's completely rubbish. Because as simple as it sounds, you could use a centralized solution for that, and most likely your user won't care if it's decentralized, if they own it, which is even then often not really true. I think you get the point. That's a blockchain side of things. And now some of you might be surprised that the same applies to AI, right? We have heard about algorithms, deterministic, you always get the same output, and it's really reliable actually, right? While AI actually is the contrast to that. It's not really reliable, it's not really deterministic. You basically have something like a specialized brain, right? Like humans. just if you look at how AIs are being built, how deep learning is being done, it's actually, as always, we looked at nature, how does it work there, how do brains work, and we draw a conclusion how we could maybe make computers smarter, right? You have neurons, you have all these input layers, output layers, and hidden layers in between, and that gives you some kind of result, right? Basically, what you give in, you get something out. And that is what we see with ChatGPT, right? You ask it something, and then it gets passed through the AI model, basically, and then you get your result. And even though if you write a very similar sentence, same context, you probably get a different answer, right? And even more so, if you write the exact same sentence, a day later, you probably also get a different answer. Of course, always depends on the model and the platform that you're on. But that's the way how AIs work, most of them. They're not deterministic. You always get something out. That's maybe not what you have been expecting. So that's a great thing, right? We get awesome texts that we can use, copywriting, we can generate nice little images and even videos now, or 3D models and all that kind of stuff. But, and here's the but, do we always want to get something where we don't know what we are gonna get out of? So I'm just thinking about, and that's where I wanna trigger some thoughts in you. If you have read 0 to 1 from Peter Thiel, for example, what he said, and that really actually influenced me in the way how I build products and businesses, is always, also the technology itself is never the solution, right? If I'm not citing it wrong, but from a conceptual perspective, it's correct. Basically, how to say it correctly? For example, how is the company called in the UK? I think a really, really interesting data analytics company that do a lot of military stuff and so on. And no matter how advanced they are, they still have a senior data analyst at the end of the chain, the end of the technical tool chain, that looks at your analysis and evaluates if the analysis actually matches his own personal judgment, and then the action is being done, depending on if it's a military thing or whatever, right? But that's the way he thinks about it, basically combining the strengths of humans and technology. And AI now plays a really interesting part, of course, because it tries to mimic the strengths of a human. So I don't know if Peter Thiel has changed his thoughts around this, but basically, and I think he probably hasn't, because the AI won't give you predictable and deterministic outputs. Especially sometimes it's biased, and you get outputs from the AI you actually don't want to have, right? So the issue then is you always wanna still have a human being evaluating if the output from the AI actually makes sense, right? If you actually have played around with ChatGPT for a while, and I assume most here watching have some kind of niche expertise in some kind of topic, you will quickly notice that ChatGPT is no expert at all. It's a great, sick generalist, and basically up to where the model is going, knows everything, right? But it don't always gives you the correct answers. And it's, even when it comes to copywriting, it's not what you feel as a human is the right approach to talk, right? That emotional nuance is missing, and those kind of things. And let me get back one step now. Those are weaknesses of AI, right? then we have algorithms, and then we have blockchain, right? And algorithms is basically just an approach to software development. But AI blockchain, when does it make sense and when doesn't it make sense? Basically, simple and boring answer, when the business case actually supports it, right? I think the first red flag you always have to evaluate for yourself, when a project is advertising with AI or blockchain, and even worse, both of them, then they probably don't have a compelling business case. Or they're really, 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 really junior founders and don't understand marketing. Because you should never market the technology itself, but actually what's the outcome? What's in for the user? But if I tell you now, oh yeah, blockchain is so awesome, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that, you can do that. But actually, the only thing you want to know is, what do I get out of that by spending my own time on this, or money on this, or whatever, right? You as a user or a lead or whoever, just watching a video or reading a post, you want to actually get some value out of it. And that's probably also the reason why those selective few are now actually watching that that live Q&A. Hey, by the way, Steve just saw it. The technology itself is never the solution. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely agree. And that's the thing, right? You always have to go bottom up. I think that's the right term here. Basically, understand what's the actual pain point. What do you want to solve? And then try to keep it as simple as possible. When clients come to us, I always tell them, don't use blockchain, don't use AI, don't use anything fancy. We always just really try to understand what are your pain points, right? I don't care what technologies you want to use at first place, right? If you tell me after this you still want to use it because it helps for marketing or whatever, that's fine. But which is valid, right? Which is also a valid approach to launching your business. So nothing bad around that, as long as it doesn't result in deception of users. But basically, work from bottom to up. Like, what's the pain point you want to solve? Does AI make sense? Now, knowing what the weaknesses and strengths are, like creativity, but not deterministic most of the time, and these kind of things. Or do you need some kind of transparency, immutability, censorship resistance? Most of the time, as a business, you don't, right? Blockchain, unfortunately, and that's the main issue that technology faces. The main business case or use cases actually for blockchain are governments. But they, at the same time, oftentimes don't really have interest in implementing that. Voting and all these things. So that's that part. So the question always is, does the combination of those two actually make that much sense? And yeah, the boring answer, it's on a case-per-case basis. But I can tell you, I have seen almost none, really almost no startup that combined AI with actual blockchain, not just crypto trading analysis or something like that, but actual blockchain infrastructure or something like that, and AI. I actually haven't seen it so far that it actually makes sense. That's just bluntly said, right? I definitely agree that there are solutions that will make sense and are making sense, especially also when you go inside a company, process optimization and these kind of things. Can do a lot of things here with AI, and possibly sometimes even with blockchain, although I tend to say no to that, because blockchain is slow, expensive, and difficult to maintain. Not saying that you launch your own blockchain, but application infrastructure. So as said, to summarize, work your way from the bottom up. What's the main pain point? And then evaluate what minimal, simplest technologies do you need to use to get to that, especially in the MVP phase. Right? You don't need to hire data scientists or blockchain engineers to build your startup product to raise more money. Oftentimes that's a really bad idea, and that's where I personally lose a lot of money, because I tell that a lot of startups that approach me. Just today, I think I lost around 10K by not just trying to convince her or him to basically work with us. Or instead say, hey, let's try to build a mockup first. So that's the main thing I wanna give you here. Bottom up, use case first. Forget the technologies. They are a tool, not a solution to your marketing or raising money or whatever, because the market might turn. We saw that beautifully with blockchain, right? We had clients that raised tons of money with a blockchain vision, and suddenly the crypto market tanked. Not so funny anymore, right? You need to shift, you need to realign and all that kind of stuff. And the same will happen with AI, despite AI having really compelling and already super strong business cases. So I would argue that the downturn will be less extreme, but we will experience other downturns, of course, because AI has a lot of positive, negative consequences depending on what kind of person and profession you're in. So, all in all, thank you for watching. Ernesto is still there. And if I can ask you one favor, please because it really helps me or us. And of course, if you don't mind, hit the bell on that or here, so I don't have it yet, on my LinkedIn profile, so that would really help as well, so that you don't miss any posts anymore. Yeah, thank you for watching, and please let me know in the comments what you liked, what you disagree with. Really open person, I love to learn, and yeah, have a great evening.